Hola, I'm Gerson Borrero, editor-at-large on City and State, and we're at City and State TV, and we have a really terrific, dynamic New Yorker who happens to be on just leading the pack and following sometimes some of the great activity when it comes to issues of civil liberties in this great city. Donna Lieberman needs no introduction. She's the executive director of the New York Civil Liberties Union. Donna, welcome to City and State TV, and it's great to see you again, and it seems like you don't stop. You're everywhere. How's it going? You're having fun.
I'm certainly having fun. I wish I felt like we accomplished more. I have very high standards, but we're doing great. We're busy, and you know, I feel very privileged to be able to have a job that requires me to fight the good fight.
The good fight, you know, coming up on July 17th, which is right around the corner. We're in May. Today is when we're taping this and actually talking to you is May 6th. Yesterday, May 5th, you went to court. You're still looking for something that, I said July 17th, Eric Garner, Staten Island. This coming year, July 17th, will be a year. It seems like an eternity, especially in this, you know, the city and now the different platforms and the news cycle. It's not 24 hours. It's like it never ends. There's no cycle. It's never ending. Why is Eric Garner still important? Why is this case still, why should we care? Why should we know? Why can that not be forgotten? Like for people like you, the New York Civil Liberties Union, why is it important for every New Yorker to know the truth about this case?
I think the Eric Garner case has become emblematic. It is emblematic of the very, very deep problems we have in New York City, problems that have been, you know, decades in the making, problems, the symbol of which is broken windows policing, where there's hyper-aggressive, low-level enforcement by the police department that is colorblind on the surface, but in terms of the impact it's directed at, and it impacts communities of color, particularly the Black community, has created enormous tensions between communities of color and the police department. And it seems that the police department at all levels remains wedded, even as they have scaled down stop and frisk and rejected the policies of the last administration on stop and frisk. It appears to be very wedded to the notion of broken windows policing. And it seems like they almost have a tin ear to the fact that the way the rest of us, or many of us in New York, interpret broken windows policing is as code for racial profiling. I know that the commissioner doesn't mean it that way, but that's how people feel about it. And I think there are some assumptions that you know, the mantra of bringing crime down even lower to nothing is something that we need to try to do, and that broken windows will do it regardless of the cost in human lives. And you know, when you talk about a summons for disorderly conduct, for an open container, for riding a bike on the sidewalk, people say, well, that doesn't cost lives, that's an inconvenience. It's not just an inconvenience. You know, the impact of going to jail, of spending a night in jail, spending 2 days in jail, having a bench warrant because you're 16 years old and you didn't answer the summons, and now there's a bench warrant for your arrest because you were riding your bike on the sidewalk. The impact on the stability of communities of color, which are vulnerable to begin with because of poverty, is enormous. And I wish that were part of the police department's calculus, equation, thinking about this.
I'm listening to you intently. Let me just take you back few things you said prior to that. You mentioned the commissioner. Have you spoken to Bill Bratton about this? Have you had an actual dialogue about what it is that you're saying versus what he's saying about this concept that somehow is to keep driving crime down and give great statistics, but then it's the human cost that you're concerned about, especially, as you well state, in the communities of color, especially for Black young people. Have you had the dialogue with the commissioner? Has he even invited you to have a dialogue?
Well, unfortunately, while we have dialogue with many city officials and many high-level people in the police department, I've never sat down one-on-one with the commissioner. We had requested a meeting, which he had to, he couldn't be at, and so we met with some of his high-level but still subordinates. So the answer is no, we have not met one-on-one, and it's unfortunate. And in fact, I've just been sort of planning to reach out again, because I think that the commissioner means well, and that...
You really believe he means well?
Of course. Of course, and I think that while there are lots of criticisms of what happened in LA, I think a lot of people believe that he made important progress there, and there has been enormous progress in New York City. But I think there are some fundamental problems that need to be addressed, and you know, I think dialogue will help. You know, what has happened nationwide, you know, is I think shocking to the entire country. It's shocking in the sense that what we're seeing in terms of the racial divides in this society, I think most Americans had no clue about. They were part of it, but people were, I think, unaware that there are these deep-seated tensions, but also like a different reality that people come from.
But I could see people saying, Donna, but we elected a Black president, the first Black president.
Yeah.
You know, that's supposed to be in the past. You know, post-racial Obama.
Yeah.
Has this made it worse? Has this made pushed to the surface the tensions that really existed all along and were kept quiet because there wasn't this level of expectation of the first African-American president? Does that have to play in it, or is it that Obama has been too quiet on it? He was in New York recently, he happened to speak out a little bit more about it. He's speaking out, but it's towards the tail end of his 8 years. Do you have a sense of that, or is it?
I don't think it's about the expectations from the first Black president. I mean, the impact and history of that is huge. But I think that what we're seeing is the collateral damage, the results of a combination of policies which include policies that have exacerbated beyond, I think, anybody's imagination the divide with regard to wealth in this country, the rollback of one social program after the next, and accompanying that, you know, sort of, I mean, educational policies and policing policies that have really undermined the stability of the most vulnerable communities. And I think that the solution to our national crisis about race and equity and social justice is going to be about a lot more than policing. It's about policing. It's about retraining the police departments so that every police officer on every street in the United States has the mission to make the public believe, the public of all races and nationalities believe that the policeman is there to be my friend, to support me and protect me, every one of me, and not just in white communities.
If Eric Garner, because you deal from a point, you as a white person, white woman who actually is very sensitive to this and has firsthand knowledge how this impacts in such a negative way, in a profound way, that destroys communities, not only families. Once you get to the unit of the family, it destroys the community and just becomes a real big problem that multiplies. If Eric Garner were white, would you have had to file this to get those records?
Well,
is it the system, or is it just the fact that he's Black and under the conditions that Eric Garner was asphyxiated, that he wasn't allowed to breathe?
No, I don't think the question is whether we would have had to file to get the records. There wouldn't have been any records to have to get, because this would never happen to a white person. There's no way that the police department would have done this to a white person. You know, and
similar circumstances. If Eric Garner were white,
There is no way this would happen to a white person, and that doesn't mean that the secrecy of the grand jury problem isn't colorblind. It is kind of a colorblind problem that when it comes to police killings of civilians, and all grand jury proceedings, but it's problematic with regard to police killings of civilians. There is a shroud of secrecy surrounding the grand jury. There is no excuse for that. There is no excuse for a DA being able to take a grand jury and give them evidence and tell them what to do and come out the other end when everybody has seen that the police abused this man to the point that it killed him. There's no excuse in the public's mind, right, for there not to be any kind of accountability, any kind of an indictment, even for reckless endangerment, nothing. So what has happened here is that the secrecy has enhanced, has magnified the suspicions we have of the criminal justice system, and rightly so. I mean, anybody who's not suspicious of what went on in that grand jury when they saw the videotape, right, is living on another planet. And the secrecy undermines our ability to have an informed conversation about what reforms we need, both in terms of police practices and in terms of how our grand juries operate.
Donna Lieberman, there was an election yesterday in which those people that may have been out of their mind or another planet or crazy, or maybe, you know, just didn't want to see the reality of that tape in which the police officers proceeded to really deprive him of his life, Eric Garner, for whatever reason, and, you know, in taking him down. And that election saw Dan Donovan elected as the next representative for the 11th Congressional District in parts of Brooklyn and Staten Island. So does that say to you, or it should say to everyone, this guy is on the right side? There were people so afraid of black people and black men, and that are willing to accept even the police really overreaching and depriving someone of their life just because they're black.
There's no question but that election is a confirmation of what Dan Donovan did as DA, and it's a confirmation that came, you know, without any facts. You know, New York now has to live with the fact that you know, one of our city's representatives in Congress stands for continuing the problem of racial insensitivity, racial harms in policing and in the criminal justice system. But I think there's still a lot that we can do to turn around things in New York. You know, there's all eyes are on criminal justice now, and many people who never had the willingness or the understanding to demand reform are now open to that. And so there's a lot of stuff pending in Albany and in the city to change things.
You went to court yesterday. I'll get back to the going to Albany. You went to court yesterday. What does that action, what are you requesting? That's one. And on the other, Don Donovan will serve in the U.S. Congress. Right. Does this elevate the New York Civil Liberties Union and Donna Lieberman as executive director? Does it bring you, does it take you to a better platform to be able to denounce this person who actually wants to maintain this secret?
We're not looking to denounce people. We're looking to change policies. We're looking to reform policies.
So it goes beyond
This isn't
Dan
personal
Donovan.
to Dan Donovan. This is about the system.
Okay.
And I think that, you know, what we went to court for is we filed a brief yesterday outlining our arguments for the release of the grand jury transcript in the Eric Garner case. We went to court for transparency, and part of our legislative platform in Albany is about transparency. Broken windows is about summonses. What they were looking to arrest Eric Garner for was a summonsable offense, right? We don't know as a city who the hundreds of thousands of people who get summonses are. We all have a good idea. You go to Broadway, to the summons court, and you see that it's all people of color there, 90%. But there is no accurate record of who gets a summons. The public has a right to know. broken windows, they say, is colorblind. They say it's about law and order. They say it's about preventing big crimes from happening. I want to know how many black people get summonses for marijuana. I want to know how many white people get those summonses for marijuana, and I want to know how many Latinos get those summonses for marijuana, because I want to know how many black people's lives are upended by having to go to court and miss a day of work, or upended by having to pay a fine or not failing to pay a fine and getting a bench warrant and getting picked up the next time you're smoking marijuana on the street, or the next time you're walking your dog without a leash, or the next time you're riding your bike on the sidewalk, or you're walking with an open container. I want to know the impact on people of color. And if we know that, as we learned with stop and frisk, you know, it was all about black people. It was about black people going about their business. So you know, one of the things that's before the City Council is Melissa Mark Viverito's proposal to take some of these summonses, you know, public urination, open container, and like, if we as a society care about people peeing in public, let's make it a civil offense. Let's make it no more serious than a parking ticket, right? And if you don't pay your parking
Urination
ticket,
in public.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. It's about why should anybody go to jail for peeing behind a car? Should anybody ever go to jail and be vulnerable to go to jail for having an open beer container on the street?
I agree with you on the open can, but there is something that most people that have to go and they urinate in public don't necessarily have to pick a place. There's also the fact that you expose yourself. That's what I have a problem, and most New Yorkers have a problem with. You understand that?
That's a crime. That's a crime. It's a separate crime. Go arrest somebody for that crime. If you don't see somebody exposing themselves, or if they're not trying
but by the fact that you urinate, you expose yourself.
We could go into the details of that. Not necessarily. If you see somebody exposing themselves in public, it's a different story. But if somebody is peeing behind a car, right, and they are not, why go after them criminally? Gotcha. Why send them to jail? We have been into this mission of like throwing the book at people, and it's very sexy when somebody is riding a bike on the sidewalk, you know, to sort of, you know, there's a bad incident, and so let's make it a crime. We shouldn't go be running to make everything a crime.
There's no doubt. Look, I've been on the criticism of when Ray Kelly was there, and also, you know, I'd be okay with this concept of, you know, broken windows and tracking people down if they did it on Wall Street. If they did it in Midtown.
No, you wouldn't.
Yes,
because
I
it's
would,
not
because that's where white. Listen, I go around. If you go right now, I don't want to get into argument with you, but you're my guest here. But the fact is, if you go to Midtown now, if you go Radio City Music Hall, around Rockefeller Center, you see white folks smoking weed.
And does it hurt anybody?
No, but yet it seems to hurt when black folks do it or Latinos.
No, the point is, let's not do the wrong thing for white people that we're doing for black people. Let's
not do it at all.
Let's do right by everybody and not arrest anybody for smoking marijuana.
Okay, but you'd have to change the law for that.
You don't have to change the law. Police have discretion. You think they don't see people smoking in Midtown? Of course they do. But it's not their priority. It shouldn't be their priority for black people either. And one more, you know, aspect of this, of criminalizing so much, is our kids in school. Kids get summonses for disorderly conduct in school. Kids get arrested for writing on the desk. Enough, enough, enough. No child should ever get arrested for an offense like that.
July 17th, it'll be a year for Eric Garner. As we close up, and you're so passionate, I love it, and I know you have the good fight in you. Eric Garner, if this fails and you don't get, why is it important that we know exactly, just in closing, why is it for lawmakers to know the process and how it went down? Do you think that there was an influence from the DA in getting this grand jury not to indict?
I'm a criminal defense lawyer, a reformed criminal defense lawyer. We had a saying, a DA could get an indictment on a ham sandwich. Of course the DA played a role. We don't even know what the instructions were to the grand jury. What's so highly classified about that? The public has a right to know, and responsible policymaking relies not on suppositions and suspicions, but on facts. Let's find out what went down. Okay? And so if the public knows, then that may not fix everything, but it will give us information based on which we can come up with good policies that promise justice for all. That would be kind of cool.
On that note, I'm Gerson Borrero with Donna Lieberman, who will stay on the case of Eric Garner and to see if finally what happened in the grand jury, what the instructions were from DA Donovan, and how the system really conspires against people of color, black men, Latino men, Asian people. I'm Gerson Borrero. Great having you on, Donna Lieberman.
Thanks for having me.
And keep the good fight going. Give them hell. I'm Gerson Borrero for City and State TV.